The midday sun blazed over Ouagadougou as President Ibrahim Traoré's convoy navigated the city's dusty streets. Having spent the morning attending official events, the president felt an intense hunger gnawing at him. Seated in the back of his black SUV, he turned to his guards and said, "I need to eat. I can't take it anymore." One guard suggested a high-end restaurant nearby, emphasizing its cleanliness and security. Another added, "Only important people eat there. It's the best." President Traoré shook his head, a slight smile on his lips. "No, I don't trust those places. Too many enemies are watching me. Those big restaurants, anything can happen there," he replied calmly but firmly. "Find me a simple place, a local restaurant where common people eat." 10 minutes later, they parked beside a modest eatery with a faded signboard swaying in the breeze. The aroma of fried fish and spicy stew filled the air. Locals sat under the shade, laughing and enjoying their meals. President Traoré smiled. "This is real life," he remarked as he stepped out of the car. An elderly man with grey hair and tired eyes welcomed them warmly. "Good afternoon, my sons. Come sit. We have the best food in town." They settled at a corner table while the guards discreetly surveyed the area. The restaurant owner, eager to serve such distinguished guests, hurried to the kitchen. Soon, a steaming plate of rice and stew was placed before President Traoré. As he lifted his spoon, a disheveled old woman appeared suddenly. Her clothes were tattered, and she walked with a slight limp. Without a word, she rushed to the table, grabbed the president's plate, and hurled it to the floor. The guards sprang to their feet, hands moving towards their weapons. The patrons gasped, some rising to witness the commotion. "How dare you!" one guard shouted. "Beat her," another commanded. But President Traoré raised his hand. "No," he said. "Leave her. She is someone's mother. Maybe she is not well mentally." The guards hesitated but complied, though their anger simmered. The woman stood silently, breathing heavily, her eyes fixed on the president. The restaurant owner, trembling with fear, apologized profusely. "Sir, I am so sorry. Please let me bring another plate." Another plate of hot food was soon placed before President Traoré. Just as he picked up his spoon, the old woman lunged forward again. This time, she seized the plate, sat on the floor, and began eating with her bare hands. The guard's patience snapped. "Enough is enough," one roared, moving to restrain her. Yet again, President Traoré intervened. "Leave her," he said quietly. "If she is hungry, let her eat." The patrons whispered among themselves, some believing the woman was mad, others sensing a bad omen. The embarrassed restaurant owner brought a third plate of food. The aroma was even more enticing. As President Traoré lifted his spoon once more, the old woman stood up slowly. Her eyes were clear now, her voice strong and serious. "Young man," she addressed the president without recognizing him, "if you value your life, do not eat this food. Disaster will strike if you do." The restaurant fell silent. President Traoré's anger flared. He had been patient and respectful, but now she was overstepping. "I am hungry, woman," he said coldly. "I have respected you enough. How dare you tell me not to eat?" The old woman remained unmoved, her eyes filled with sadness and something else, fear. "Eat it, and you will regret it," she warned again. The guards were livid. One moved to drag her away, but President Traoré stopped him. "Stop," he ordered. His gaze narrowed as he studied the old woman. Something about her words struck a chord deep within him. "Bring me the restaurant owner," he commanded. The old man approached, hands shaking. "Yes, sir." "Who prepared this food?" President Traoré inquired. "My wife, sir. She is the cook," the man replied nervously. "Call her." The man hurried into the kitchen. Minutes later, a woman with an apron and a nervous smile emerged, visibly terrified. "Did you cook this food yourself?" President Traoré asked. "Yes, sir," she stammered. "Show me your hands," he said. Confused, she extended her hands. President Traoré examined her palms, then looked into her eyes. Sweat beaded on her forehead, her eyes darting around like a trapped animal. "You are lying," he stated quietly. The old woman in the corner nodded slowly. The restaurant owner looked shocked. "My wife would never." President Traoré stood up, searched the kitchen. He ordered his guards. Within minutes, they discovered a small bottle with a black skull drawn on it, hidden under the cooking counter poison. The guards apprehended the woman, who fell to her knees, crying and begging for mercy. She confessed everything. Some men had paid her to poison a special guest they heard was coming through town. They didn't know it would be the president himself. The patrons gasped in horror. Some prayed aloud. Others wept. President Traoré turned to the old woman, shame burning in his heart. He had nearly lost his life. Because he didn't listen, he approached her and knelt down, shocking everyone. "Mother," he said, tears in his eyes, "you saved my life." The old woman simply smiled as the crowd slowly dispersed and the would-be assassin was dragged away by local police. President Ibrahim Traoré remained kneeling before the old woman. Her presence, once dismissed as a nuisance, now radiated with a quiet authority that even the guards could not deny. He stood, brushing the dust from his trousers, and turned to his security detail. "From this moment forward, this woman is under my personal protection. Treat her with the same respect you show me." The guards hesitated. One leaned in, whispering, "Sir, she could be mentally unwell. We still don't know who she is." "I know exactly who she is," Ibrahim said. "She is the reason I'm still breathing." He reached out his hand to her. "Mother, come with me." The guards opened the door to his vehicle. To their astonishment, he personally helped the old woman into the seat beside him. The motorcade resumed its journey, but the mood was transformed. The old woman sat silently, eyes gazing out the window, but the air between them pulsed with tension. At the palace gates, guards and servants stood frozen in disbelief as President Traoré exited the car, holding the woman's hand. "Prepare the best guest room," he instructed firmly. "She will stay here," aides stammered in confusion, but none dared question him. That evening, over a modest dinner in his private study, Ibrahim sat alone with the old woman. "Tell me," he asked, "how did you know the food was poisoned? And how did you know I would be there?" The old woman sipped her tea slowly before answering. "My son, last night I dreamed of fire and death. I saw a man seated at a table. You, a black cloud hovered above you. A hand stretched from the shadows to feed you poison. I woke up trembling. I knew I had to go to that street." Ibrahim swallowed hard. "You're a seer," she smiled, "not in the way the world thinks. I have lived many years. I have seen the faces of men before they strike. And more importantly," she leaned closer, "I have seen betrayal wear a uniform." The words hit him like a bullet. "What do you mean?" he asked. She placed a hand on his shoulder. "Not all your enemies are in exile, Mr. President. Some of them eat at your table, some wear your insignia." He froze. "Are you saying my own guards?" She nodded slowly. "A tree doesn't fall from the wind alone. It falls when its roots are rotting. You must check your roots." That night, Ibrahim didn't sleep. The woman's words echoed in his mind like a drumbeat. He remembered the subtle signs, strange movements in the palace, hushed voices ending abruptly when he entered, shifts in loyalty that seemed harmless until now. By dawn, he had made a decision. He summoned a private meeting with only his most senior guards. None of the political aides were invited. The old woman sat quietly in a corner of the room, now wearing a clean dress given by one of the palace maids. She said nothing, but her eyes missed nothing. As the guards lined up before him, Ibrahim spoke plainly. "Today, I ask you to prove your loyalty in a way no oath can." The room stiffened. "One by one," he said, "you will place your hand on the holy book and swear before God, before this woman, and before me that you harbour no intent of harm." One by one, the guards complied. The first swore boldly. The second hesitated for a moment, but followed through. The third, his voice shook. By the fourth, the old woman stood. "That one," she said softly but firmly, pointing at the third man. Ibrahim's heart thudded in his chest. "Swear again," he ordered. The man's legs gave out. He collapsed in tears. "Please, I'm sorry. They promised money. They said you'd never know." Ibrahim's face tightened, but he did not shout. "Who are they?" he asked. "Men from outside. People who fear your reforms." The guards sobbed. "They wanted you gone before you could finish what you started." Silence fell. No one dared breathe. Ibrahim turned to his chief of security. "Take him. I want names. I want links. I want everything." The man was dragged out. Still crying, Ibrahim stood for a long moment before turning to the old woman. "You've saved me again, Mother." She placed a hand on his shoulder. "Powerful men," she said, "rarely die from their enemy's sword. They die from their friend's silence." Ibrahim's eyes glistened. "You will not leave me. From now on, you stay in this house, by my side." She nodded quietly. "Then you must listen. The danger has not passed. They will try again." That night, Ibrahim held his wife's hand tightly and told her everything. She wept not out of fear, but out of relief. "You finally see what I tried to warn you," she whispered. He nodded. "Yes, but from now on, I'll never look away." The next morning, the air in the presidential compound was unusually tense. Guards moved in tighter formations. Servants whispered nervously in corridors. Word had begun to spread not of the failed poisoning, but of what it had exposed. Inside the presidential intelligence wing, President Ibrahim Traoré sat in front of a whiteboard covered with names, red lines, and arrows. Each name represented a thread, each line a connection. But the web no longer seemed local. It was wide, too wide, and it led somewhere far beyond the palace gates. His chief of intelligence, Colonel Umar Diabate, briefed him with a grave tone. "We've interrogated the traitor." He gave up 3 names, all senior security officials who've travelled recently to Côte d'Ivoire. Under unofficial cover, were they cleared by border control? Ibrahim asked. "No, sir." They crossed through a humanitarian missions caravan unregistered, using NGO credentials. Ibrahim's face hardened. "And who paid for their travel?" Diabate hesitated. "Accounts linked to a shell company in Abidjan, registered under a former colonel who served under Compaoré's regime. He's been living in exile since the 2022 reforms." The president stood, his jaw clenched. "So the architects are in place," just as she said. Across the room, seated calmly on a cushioned bench, the old woman nodded slowly. "They are not finished. This was just one blade. Many more are hidden." That afternoon, President Traoré called an emergency meeting with his newly established inner circle, a small group of trusted individuals chosen after the betrayal. He placed the old woman at his right. The others exchanged puzzled glances but dared not question it. Traoré spoke with a quiet intensity. "The attack came from 2 directions, inside our own kitchen and across our borders. This is not just a security lapse, it's a coordinated political project." He tapped on a map. Red pins marked key locations: Ouagadougou, Abidjan, Bouaké, Gar, Niamey. The network is not just military, it involves former politicians, foreign business actors, and even charitable fronts. They move through churches, mosques, civil society. They whisper doubt, plant rumors, and recruit the forgotten. The old woman added, "They feed on the hungry, the bitter, and the proud." One advisor asked cautiously, "Do we have names?" Colonel Diabate answered, "We have aliases. Real names are harder. But we've intercepted encrypted communications linking several Ivorian mobile accounts to phones in Bobo Dioulasso, and even within the capital, someone inside is helping them coordinate." Traoré turned to his chief cyber intelligence officer. "Decrypt everything. I don't care how long it takes. If someone inside my palace is speaking to the enemy, I want to know who." That evening, a new discovery landed like thunder. An intercepted voice memo. Male, educated, Ivorian accent. The voice said, "The president survived, but his trust is shaken. That is good. Distrust weakens resolve. Keep the clerics talking. Stir doubt in the army. Next time, we won't need poison. We'll let his own house eat him alive." Traoré's blood went cold. The strategy wasn't just assassination, it was erosion. Divide the president from his people. Make him fear his friends. Isolate him from his allies. Let paranoia hollow him from within. The old woman whispered as she listened to the audio. "This is the voice of a serpent. He will strike again." That night, Ibrahim didn't retreat into solitude. He went to the city, disguised in civilian clothing and surrounded only by 2 loyal guards. He walked the streets of Ouagadougou markets, alleys, tea shops. He listened to conversations, heard the rumors, saw the doubt that had begun to creep in. He's changing too much, too fast. The West will never allow this independence. They'll remove him just like the others. Returning to the palace after midnight, he gathered his family. "They are right," he said quietly. "We are being watched, and not just by them, by the whole world, waiting for us to fail." His wife, ever composed, asked, "And what will you do?" "Not fail," he said simply. The old woman entered from the balcony, her gaze sharp. "Then listen, my son. The next move is not defense. It is revelation. Shine a light on the shadows, and the rats will scatter." He nodded. "Then we begin tomorrow." Morning broke over Ouagadougou, golden and deceptively peaceful. But inside the presidential compound, the storm had already begun. President Ibrahim Traoré stood in front of a wall-sized digital map in the National Intelligence Center. Red markers blinked across the screen, evidence of a network no longer just whispering, but moving. They've begun regrouping, Colonel Umar Diabate announced grimly. Intercepted messages from Bouaké and Yamoussoukro confirm coordination activity. Multiple ex-officers are meeting under diplomatic cover. We believe they formed a central node. Traoré's eyes narrowed. A council, yes, sir, not formal, but powerful, former military elites, ousted politicians, foreign financiers. We call them the Exile Council. He didn't flinch. He had expected this, but now he needed names. One name surfaced first, Colonel Amadou Diallo, once a national hero under Blaise Compaoré, now living in a guarded villa outside Abidjan. Officially, a logistics consultant. Unofficially, the treasurer of a coup. Then came Captain Yassine Ouattara, formerly of the Special Reconnaissance Unit, disappeared in 2023 after the Sahel Alliance was announced, now rumoured to be training mercenaries in the Ivorian hinterlands. Then a third name, a name that made Traoré's jaw tighten. Keita Zongo, a childhood friend, a man who had marched beside him during the 2022 uprising, a man he had entrusted with secrets who vanished a year ago under the excuse of spiritual retreat. Now he was back. Not in Burkina Faso, but in exile, whispering, plotting, Traoré whispered under his breath. The betrayal was seeded before I even noticed the rain. That night, he held a closed-door meeting in the presidential war room. The old woman sat beside him, her eyes fixed on the maps and photographs. What do you see? Mother, he asked her quietly. She pointed to Keita Zongo's image. That one has not yet drawn his sword, but he will. And when he does, it will be with tears in his eyes. Then we strike first, said Traoré. But the old woman shook her head. No, let the truth strike. Truth cuts deeper than blades. So they hatched a new plan. The president would not silence the whispers. He would expose them. The following day, in an unprecedented move, President Ibrahim Traoré appeared live on national television. No teleprompter, no prepared speech, just him staring into the camera. My people, he said, voice steady. Last week, I was almost killed, not by a stranger, by a hand pretending to serve. Poisoned, not by foreign armies, but by promises bought with gold and envy. Today, I tell you the truth. There are men outside our borders once honoured, now hiding who seek to return. Not to build, but to rule. They wear no uniforms now, but their words are weapons. Their silence is strategy, and their money flows like a river from the hands of those who once fed on our resources, now angered that we've taken them back. The people were stunned, the elites were shaken, and the Exile Council, they panicked. That same night, a secure line between Abidjan and a satellite phone near Banfora lit up with desperate messages. He's exposing everything. The woman must be a witch. What do we do next? Inside the compound, the old woman listened quietly to the decoded audio. They fear truth, she said, and Fouchouard makes them reckless. Indeed, within days, an informant in Cotonou passed along intelligence that the Exile Council was planning a second strike not through poison, but through a cyber attack. Their goal, paralyze the national power grid, cause unrest, and in the confusion, strike again. Ibrahim did not flinch. This time, he moved preemptively. Under the cover of night, elite cyber units launched counter-operations. Bank accounts were frozen, communication hubs disrupted, and in an unprecedented diplomatic maneuver, Burkina Faso formally summoned the Ivorian ambassador for urgent consultations. The message was clear. We know. Yet Traoré was not done. He issued an order to his national media team, publish the names, all of them. Within 48 hours, Burkinabe newspapers ran bold front pages, the faces of betrayal, the Exile Council unmasked. For the first time, the people saw the enemy not as shadows, but as faces, and one face stung more than any other. Keita Zongo. Traoré sat in his office, holding the paper in his hands. The old woman placed a cup of herbal tea beside him. He will come to you, she said softly, with words of sorrow. Be ready. Traoré nodded, staring into the darkening sky. The rain came without warning. Dark clouds rolled over Ouagadougou like a curtain drawing down on an old play. Lightning cut the sky above the palace. And yet inside, the president waited not for the storm, but for a man, a ghost from his past. Keita Zongo arrived just before midnight. He came alone, unarmed, his hands lifted in peace. The guards searched him thoroughly. He did not resist. He was thinner than Ibrahim remembered. His eyes held no anger, only weight, guilt, silence. The old woman watched from the balcony, her shawl fluttering in the wind. "He's come to confess," she said, "but not for forgiveness." Ibrahim stood in the grand chamber as Kader was led in. No throne, no ceremony, just two chairs, and the past between them. For a long moment, neither man spoke. Finally, Ibrahim broke the silence. "You vanished when we needed you most." Kader nodded. "I thought I was saving myself, but I lost everything. You betrayed your oath." "I did. You joined them. I stood near them. But I never raised my hand against you." Ibrahim's fists clenched. "You gave them our roots, our codes. You built the bridge they nearly walked across to kill me." Kader looked down. "Yes, a beat passed, then two, then three. But I came back, 'cause I couldn't watch them destroy what we built." The old woman entered quietly and stood beside the president. Her presence changed the air in the room. Kader looked up, startled. "I know you," he whispered. "I saw you once. In a refugee camp near Dori. You prayed with the widows. You carried water on your back for strangers." She nodded. "You were a good man. Then you became hungry for the wrong things." Kader fell to his knees. "I didn't come to beg for mercy," he said. "I came to warn you. They've moved beyond Burkina Faso. They are building cells in Bamako, Niamey, even Dakar. They've begun buying support in ECOWAS, painting you as a dictator. They want international legitimacy to replace you with one of their own." Ibrahim's heart tightened. "How do I know you're not their last move?" "You don't," Kader said. "But you know me. At least you used to." Silence settled again. This time it was broken by the old woman. "Let the past weigh itself. Now we face the storm." And the storm was coming. The following weeks were the most tense in recent history. Foreign embassies issued vague warnings. International outlets ran editorials questioning Traoré's leadership. ECOWAS called for restoration of constitutional order. Despite Traoré being in power through a transitional charter supported by the people, Burkina Faso was under siege, not with bombs, but with narrative. So Ibrahim fought back with transparency. He launched a truth series, a weekly broadcast where he revealed internal findings, foreign manipulations, names of conspirators, economic sabotage. He didn't shout. He didn't accuse. He showed slowly. The tide turned. The people rallied. Regional youth movements across the Sahel began to echo his speeches. In Mali, students painted murals of the Sahel Lions, Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger. In Chad, journalists called him the leader who speaks what others whisper. And through it all, the old woman remained by his side. She never asked for riches, never sought titles, but her words became legend. She spoke once every 2 weeks, simple, poetic truths recorded and broadcast like scripture. You cannot poison a river that flows from the mountains. And this man, this Ibrahim, is a mountain. As for Kader, he did not stay. He asked only for one thing, to return to the north, where the insurgency still burned. "I cannot fix what I broke from here," he said. "Let me go where the fire is hottest." Ibrahim looked at him for a long time before nodding. "Then go." Not as a soldier, as a brother who must atone. They never saw each other again, but Ibrahim would often glance northward at sunset and whisper, "I hope the fire purifies you." Years passed. Ibrahim Traoré grew wiser. His enemies grew louder, but weaker. The exile council fractured. Some were arrested abroad. Others faded into irrelevance. Foreign pressure never stopped. But Burkina Faso didn't fall, and the old woman, she died quietly, in her sleep. During the Harmattan winds, the nation mourned. She was buried in the palace garden, beneath a baobab tree, with a single inscription. She saw the shadow before it came. She whispered, and the mountain moved. President Ibrahim Traoré stood before her grave that evening, alone. "Because of you," he said softly, "I learned to see in the dark." And as the wind whispered through the trees, it almost sounded like her voice. "Never stop listening.